So our last video looked at finding sides. So they gave you an angle and you had to find a missing side. Well, now you'll be given two sides and you'll have to find the missing angle. So looking at number 3, they gave me the opposite and the hypotenuse, which when I have an opposite and hypotenuse means I'm going to use sine. So sine of x is equal to 9 over 14. So when we're trying to find a missing angle, we want to use the inverse to solve for x, because we have to get rid of this sine. We're trying to get x by itself. To get x by itself, to get rid of the sine, you have to take the inverse of both sides, okay? The inverse is this guy right here, sine to the -1. So we'll take sine to the -1 of both sides. So what you end up with is x is equal to sine -1 of 9 over 14. If you don't believe me, watch the video. There was a little spot in there on finding the inverse. So when we type it in, if you look underneath that trig button, there is a sine to the -1. That's your inverse. So take the inverse, and inside there is going to be 9 divided by 14. You get that x is equal to 40.0052. So x is equal to 40 degrees. I know before we round to 2 decimal places, that's because we were finding length, but now we're trying to find an angle, so we're going to round to the nearest whole number. Okay, if we look at the number 4, the opposite, and we have the hypotenuse, so sine of x is equal to 31 over 38. We're trying to get x by itself. What's in front of it is a sine, so you have to take the inverse of both sides. So these cancel out. You're left with x is equal to the inverse sine of 31 over 38. So when we type that in, 31 divided by 38, you get you get that x is equal to, and this time they gave us 4 decimal places, so let's keep it with the 2 decimal places. We'll make that our rule during trig, 54.67 degrees. I know with this one I said whole number, but it was 40.005, which should have been 40.001. But let's go ahead and leave it as 40. We'll keep it to 2 decimal places moving forward. So now we want to go ahead and try the cosine. So looking at cosine, they gave me the hypotenuse, and this is the adjacent. So cosine of x is equal to the 44 over 52. So just like before, you're trying to get x by itself. You're going to take the inverse of cosine, which is cosine to the -1 of both of them. These then cancel out, so x is equal to the inverse of 44 over 52. So when we solve, we'll use the inverse cosine, 44 divided by 52. So that angle is equal to 32.204, which is 20 degrees. We're just using the inverse of whatever they have, okay? So this is your hypotenuse. This is the adjacent. So cosine of x is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse, which is 24. And we're trying to get x by itself. You can't divide by cosine, so you take the inverse of cosine. So x is equal to 19 divided by 24. So when you take the inverse of 19 divided by 24, you get that it's 37.6585. So that is 37.66 degrees. All right, so 2 more. Let's look at the tangents. Number 15 and 16. Here's your opposite, and then here's your adjacent. So it's tangent of x is equal to 21 over 25. Okay, so just like we did with sine and just like with cosine, to get that x by itself, you have to take the inverse, okay? Because when you're solving for your angle measure, you're using the inverse, in this case, of tangent. (21 divided by 25), you get that x is equal to 40.03 degrees. When looking at this guy, your opposite is 6, your adjacent is 10, so tangent of x is equal to opposite over adjacent. To get x by itself, you're going to take the inverse, and I'm writing them at an angle just because I don't have a lot of space, so then the inverse tangent of 6 over 10 is going to tell me how many degrees that missing angle is. So 30.9638, x is equal to 30.96 degrees.